Hello, crew. Welcome back to Well Said. I'm so excited you're here. I love having nutrition conversations because being in the world of fitness too, it's a huge conversation piece and people ask me about it often. And I think we're running into a lot of us feeling like there is so much mass information that it is unmanageable, unbearable. We can't focus. We don't know which one to choose. We have to choose. We can't have healthy and unhealthy at the same time. Even myself, I'm on a learning journey of like, what do I need to unlearn? And what have I been told that's actually not true? And it's not healthy to live by. So I'm very excited. We have someone on, Shana Minei Spence, and she is the owner of The Nutrition Tea and the author of Live Nourished. She's amazing. We were chatting before this. I won't lie. We can't help it. Her book is a non-diet book that takes in socioeconomics into the conversation, which I think a lot of us forget about when we're saying and stating our extremes. But she's a registered dietitian nutritionist based in Brooklyn, New York. We love New York. And she's just got a ton of amazing background. You work in public health for the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, community nutrition lessons, you own your own company. She describes herself as an all foods fit dietitian. I just think this is such an amazing conversation because we don't have to pick. And I want to talk about it. So Shana, welcome. I'm excited.
Thank you so much. Yes, I'm so excited.
I think you know all too well the problem conversations that are happening, like how I kind of buttoned it up to be and why I was like, oh, okay, I need to have you on is we're living in a health extremes environment that is literally brainwashing us and making it hard and expensive and creating panic in America. And me even being in the industry is like, oh my God, we have so much mass information. There's things you can eat. There's things you cannot eat. I mean, can you talk about the harms of this conversation?
Totally. And I think there's so much information thrown at us, also misinformation as well. Yeah. And it's so hard because even a dietitian, even someone in the health field, or you could be a professional in any field. And I even find myself questioning my own like learning and everything like that because it's so much. And I think that social media, it has its good and bad, right? I think social media is such a great learning tool, but it's also where so many people kind of get towards a detour because there's so much thrown at you. And some of it, unfortunately, is harmful, right? Because I'm seeing a lot of scare tactics, a lot of fear mongering, with certain headlines, clickbait. And I mean, there's a whole list of, there's like so many topics that we can talk about. It's hard to choose just one, which is sad, right? Because it's not like just one thing. I see so much misinformation out there, but at the same time, people are scared to just eat food and to enjoy food. So I understand people's concerns because, you know, when you see something, you do tend to question it, but also I think we're getting to a point where it's just too much and people are harping on the negative, which isn't good for our mental health. It's not good for our physical health. So I'm very happy to always try to debunk the myths for sure.
I'm thankful for you debunking them. I mean, even in an example would be if you're like, I can't think of a ton. I'm like, I can think of a million. And there's literally like, so you and I know this both. There's so many, but one that I always think about is like, okay, I took a food sensitivity test, for example. I have intolerances right now to eggs and gluten because my gut needs to heal. What that doesn't mean is that I need to stay away from eggs for the rest of my life or gluten for the rest of my life. What that also doesn't mean is that I need to tell the internet and my followers that they should not be eating eggs and gluten because they're bad and they're always bad. Yes. Can gluten be inflammatory when you have an intolerance? Yes. An intolerance is temporary. Yeah. So it's just like the context is being misconstrued. I mean, this is what I wanted to ask you about as I'm sipping it. Coffee being bad.
Oh, I have my coffee as well.
Okay, good.
So yes, cheers. It's so interesting because I like what you said, where it's just because you can't even, I have a ton of allergies, right? So things that I cannot eat and will never, unfortunately, be able to eat. So I'm allergic to nuts. I'm allergic to soy. And soy, it depends on what side of the internet you're on, because some people love it. Some people hate it. If I'm science backed, it's fine. I'll just put it that way, but I'm allergic to it. But I'm not telling people don't eat soy because you're going to get a reaction. It's just how my body reacts to soy. So I think that's the difference. Yeah. And even intolerances, the same thing. Sometimes, a certain food can just trigger something. And that doesn't mean that that food is bad for everybody. It's just how your body reacts to it. And so I think that's the difference when we're seeing a lot of this information. I can understand some people maybe having a reaction to a food or an ingredient. I totally get that. But does that mean that the rest of society can't have that? No. And that's where we're going wrong, where I think that there's a lot of misinformation out there. I think that also, unfortunately, people know that negative talk, unfortunately, gets clicks. And we're living in a very influencer type world right now. So you're going to see a lot of that. But I just want people to know, just because someone else is eating in a certain way does not mean that way is right for you or you have to do that. I don't care if it's your favorite celebrity. They also have intolerances and allergies, so it's okay. Like, that doesn't mean you have to follow them. So that's my goal for anything I talk about, is just, we all are individual.
I love that. Please think of yourself before you think of others' patterns. You had a quote. I'm going to quote you. It says, "Shout out to all the influencers who constantly talk about how toxic and poisonous sodas are, and that they only put clean foods in their bodies when they are simultaneously living their best lives, drinking Negronis, margaritas, beers, and champagne in their pics. I see you." And I want to talk about that because it's so freaking true. I mean, we talked about it right before. Like, what is the problem with those types of posts and those types of intense words about a product?
Yeah, I think it's just so hypocritical. And here's the thing, right? Like, we hear about soda being bad for you, and I'm an all foods fit person. So I will also have like a Coke Zero sometimes, and, all of these things. And I just think that it's kind of weird, in my opinion, quite honestly, to talk about a certain food like soda, drink like soda, but then in your next picture, you're living your best life. And I want you to live your best life, trust me. But alcohol is an actual toxin. Like, it's actually like a classified toxin. And I'm not saying, drinking moderation and all that stuff, but I think that it's very odd to constantly only choose one thing to demonize. And not to mention, I also see a lot of people working with alcohol companies. Mm-hmm. So they have their own like products, or they, partner with a lot of these companies. And it's like, okay, great. But how are you talking about soda being bad, but you're like, doing a post about tequila? I mean, tequila is a toxin. And so I just think that it's very hypocritical. And that's my issue with a lot of the content out there, is that I see a lot of hypocrisy. I mean, even like ultra processed foods, that's a huge topic. But then you're doing a Trader Joe's haul with the frozen foods. And again, I'm not saying that's bad, because I also shop at Trader Joe's.
Me too.
But I'm just saying that, why are you talking about one thing being bad and fear-mongering, but then in another post, you're doing something else? So that's my issue with a lot of the content that I see.
What is the harm in saying good and bad foods? Like, what is that creating for us?
Yeah, I think that honestly, I don't think people realize we say it very nonchalantly. And so when I work currently at my 9 to 5 job, I work with a lot of children as well. And the teachers at a very young age are still putting like, here are the good foods we should be eating. Here are the bad foods we should be eating. And we learn these types of things since childhood, and we say it again, in a very nonchalant way. But I don't think we realize that we internalize words. And much of eating and much of food is also psychological, believe it or not. And so we internalize things. So when we think of, oh, I'm so bad today, I had, I don't know, French fries or something like that, and we say it's sort of like water cooler talk. I don't know if people even use that term anymore, but we say it again, just like in a very passive way.
Yeah.
But I don't think people realize we internalize that because we think, oh my God, I'm so bad. And then you have this guilty feeling about what you're eating, what you're consuming. And it really does have a negative effect mentally. And also, the more stress we put on ourselves, it also affects us physically. And I don't think people realize that because, again, we say it so passively, but it really does have an effect on us. So that's another reason why I really think that this whole hierarchy of foods, we should maybe try to look at again and maybe not push like a certain hierarchy because it really does take a toll. Yeah.
Absolutely, it does. And I think even like me being, I'm a healthy like person, I would say healthy, but like I live a balanced life, but I don't, I think even myself, I'm like, I try to show that. I could show it even more, but I'm like, I don't strict cut out anything. Like, yes, I will have a glass of wine if it's the right, time, or like it's a birthday or whatever. Like I still sometimes like, on a random day, I'm going to go to Chick-fil-A because I don't know, I want it. And I'm okay with my tummy gets a little uncomfortable and that's all right. I live in a balance, but it doesn't have to be so extreme. Another extreme conversation that you've had a ton is like, never eat packaged, frozen, convenient, easy foods. Can you talk about that?
Yes, that's like one of my favorite things to talk about. Because I think that there's so much nuance. Listen, like we tend to think in such black and white, and we don't realize there's a ton of gray area with food, and especially when it comes to packaged foods. Because I constantly, and again, comes from also my work in public health. And a lot of times packaged foods are very convenient financially for a lot of people. It's very accessible. There's like a ton of reasoning behind packaged foods that sometimes we need a reminder about, right? And so I tell people convenience foods are meant to be convenient. And when I say that, there are some people, again, because it's very black and white thinking, I'll get the comments like, oh, you're telling people to just eat cookies all day. You're telling people to just eat potato chips. And it's like, there are other packaged foods, and so I'm holding up like a pre-chopped salad. That is a packaged food, right? Frozen vegetables are packaged foods. They're also processed foods, right? All of these things, even if they're organic, they are still processed. I just want to put that out there also. So I think that sometimes we need to realize there's a ton of nuance. And also, just because something is processed, I know that word is scary. Just because it's processed doesn't mean it's bad, quote unquote, bad for you. We need to start looking at the nutrients it's providing, the nutrition it's providing. Because an example I will always give is when you see those like supplemental nutrition products in hospitals, in clinics. My dad's in a nursing home right now, and those Ensure milkshakes are like the only thing that's not the only thing, but it's one of his main sources of nutrition. That's ultra processed, but yet that's also a life staple. So I think that we need to be more mindful of how we talk about processed food. It doesn't have to be scary.
It doesn't have to freak people out because it does. And it also turns this like, I was really bad, like conversation, like, oh, I was so bad. And I mean, to be honest, I grew up with that. Like my mom, grew up in that time where that was the conversation too. And it trickled down on me and I had to be like, wait a minute. Yeah, I had a burger last night, but like, and some fries, but like, I'm not bad. Like maybe my tummy kind of hurt because I had a little too much gluten, but like that was the gluten talking, not like the bad food. So, and yes, I do feel better when I eat better, but I'm not bad. And it's not, good versus bad. That conversation is so harmful. Can you talk about a few, just because people might have their notes out and might be writing things down, but like a few other foods that are packaged, processed, insert bad air quotes connotation that we can and should maybe be consuming.
Yeah. So I also am a huge advocate for canned beans, canned legumes. I'm busy. I mean, I'm sure that other people are, but I don't have time to soak beans for like 24 hours and then cook them. And so they are very convenient. And a lot of the canned foods and frozen foods are also very shelf stable. Mm-hmm. So that's why I actually am a big advocate for frozen vegetables. I don't know about anybody else, but I forget about my stuff in my fridge sometimes. Yeah. And I call my drawer like the vegetable hospice drawer because that's where they go to die. So I am a huge huge advocate for like frozen foods just in the freezer. Canned beans, great source of fiber, great source of protein. Like I already mentioned, like the pre-chopped salads and things like that. So that's what I mean when I say convenience foods. Like chips are also like, I like to have, fun foods too. But I'm just saying when I say convenience foods, those are the types of foods that are meant to be convenient.
Yeah, absolutely. We're still talking, I know we're talking a little negative. It's like all the problems that we're having in this industry. And I promise we'll go to solution very, very soon, everybody. But I want to talk really quick about like, what are the most dangerous myths in diet culture, because you work with a lot of diet culture, combating diet culture. Mm-hmm. What would you say the most dangerous myths are?
The severe calorie restrictions. That actually makes me very nervous because I see a lot of folks who are restricting their intake to the point where it's a little bit worrisome. And I like to give this sort of little fun fact, right? Like the organs in our body, if we total them up, and I can't remember off the top of my head, like which organ requires which number of calories, but the total number for the average person, our body requires already 1,300 calories just for our organs to work. And so when I see a diet of like 1,200 calories, right? That makes me extremely nervous, or sometimes even less than that. And I'm just like, how is your body functioning? And then when it's not sustainable, or when people are like, I feel tired, or something else isn't working. Yeah, because you're not eating. And I need us to remember that calories are energy. Calories are units of energy that our body needs. So just remember, if you see anything, I mean, I'm not all for, I just want to put that out there. I'm not a fan of calorie counting to begin with. But if you see something where they're advertising like anything less than like 1,500, just know that our body requires at least 1,300 calories just for your organs to work. And so I think that's important. And 1,200 calories also is the requirement for toddlers, by the way. So most of us are larger than toddlers. So, just another little tidbit. So that's, I would say, definitely the severe calorie restriction.
What would you say to somebody who maybe is they've got a goal to lose a little bit of weight. That's like their goal that they're working on. And they've been told that calorie restriction is the way to get there.
So I don't like to focus on numbers. I think that sometimes when we focus on numbers, whether it's a clothing size, what's, on the scale, I understand where the desire comes from to get to a certain number, but I also think that it's a hindrance, unfortunately, for many people. Oh, yeah. And sometimes we're so focused on whatever dream number that is. And I don't care if that dream number was given to you by a doctor. It's still not. Sometimes we tend to do or partake in methods that are dangerous, like I just mentioned, that severe calorie restriction, in order to get to that dream number. So what I like to focus on are actual health behaviors. So if we're talking about, let's say you want to eat better, right? You want to improve your intake. I will always say, let's look at what we can add to your day. How can we get in more vegetables? How can we get in more protein, like lean proteins? How can we eat more fruit? Things like that will actually give you energy, that will actually satisfy you. Because I think what happens is we're so busy counting and doing math that we're not actually focusing on what our body feels feels like.
Yes.
Because if we're, like sometimes it's so severe that we are lagging in energy, and that's not helping us at all. So that's always my number one tip. What can you add to your day?
I like that because it's the reverse of what people think. It's like, we always think, what can I take out? What can I remove? What can I ex-nay from it? Here's the thing that's like the just flat out truth about like this diet culture and this want to lose weight and this restriction is your body doesn't function properly when it's not being fed, period, end of story. A lot of likely what you'll find is you're probably doing some sort of maybe like over intake of a food that is not serving you in protein, carbs, calories, all the things. And that's why you're finding yourself maybe in this more weight gain period of your life. And that's also okay. It's about resetting your habits and being real with yourself, because I can guarantee that if you just reset your habits, and granted, like hormones need to be balanced, you got to be getting sleep, you got to be getting rest, right? But you will see change, and it doesn't have to be extreme, and you cannot sustainably do anything in the extreme, which is why I want to ask you about segue alert, detoxing. What actually happens when we detox?
Yes. So our organs, again, the organs in our body, they are the ones that are detoxing us. And I know that people listen, I also love those green juices. when I say treat myself, they're like, I live in New York, so they're like $15. So yes. I treat myself on payday sometimes. But they're not what's detoxing you, right? Your organs are. And so when I see something about this detox drink or this detox like salad, or, people love to throw the word detox on things and detox tea. And it's like, no. And most of those teas, by the way, are just laxatives. So yeah, like they're, if you feel like, taking, this is TMI, but you know what happens, right?
Yeah.
When we drink those. So that's not actually detoxing. It's just you going to the bathroom.
Got
but
it.
Our organs are actually detoxing us. So even our skin, right? Our skin is a barrier for a lot of the toxins in the air, right? Our organs, skin is also an organ, but our liver, right, is detoxing us. Our kidneys are filtering. So we need to remember that we can always drink, different things or eat things to support, right? Like our fruits and vegetables are very supportive for our organs, but that's not what's actually detoxing. So, and for some reason, whenever you see detox, it's usually a green product. So like the green juices, there's nothing detoxing. It's like, oh, it's green, detox. Let's just throw that word on there.
Because there's no regulation of the word. And also,
there's no regulation.
It's I'm in marketing. I know how this works, you guys. Like they're using the marketing and the behaviors of humans and what we see and what we correlate to green equal healthy. Like that's why when you type in like healthy, you'll see like, the green emojis pop up and stuff. It's like, they're using that to market these things. And like always. You said, I love that you said like, yes, the fruits and vegetables support the detoxing, like turmeric, ginger, cayenne. Those are obviously not all vegetables, but I'm just saying spices as well. They all help to detox. But you drinking a shake, let's say, or a smoothie, and you're detoxing and you're limiting your intake, you're actually limiting what the organ needs to detox because you're not feeding your body. So now you're not detoxing because the organs are not able to detox because they cannot work without the calorie intake that they need to function. Yeah. And you said something about what actually happens. Let's say you're doing a 2, 3, 4, 5 day detox. You're probably putting sugar in your body, but what's happening to your muscle mass?
Oh, well, there goes that too, because that's also going to decrease, right? So it's like, it's just one, I think of it sort of like this spiral effect where like I can't think of that, it's not a toy, but it's like where one thing happens, like it knocks into another and just goes down, like just one thing after another, right? So loss of energy, loss of then muscle mass. And if you have loss of muscle mass, again, like, are you able to really even exercise? Are you able to move your body in a way that feels good? Probably not. Right. Like, do you have energy to even move your body? Probably not. So it's like, let's try to actually eat food. you know, like real, and I shouldn't say real, here I go, real food, but you all know what I mean when I say that, like not just depending on like the shakes and the drinks, right? Like eating food. And I have to say that when I was also, you know, quick story, in my early 20s and still seeped in diet culture, I remember doing those like all day juices where I wouldn't eat anything. And I just had, you know how you had those like shakes lined up?
Yes.
And I remember it was just my body deteriorating and me just making excuses. I was like, yeah, I feel a lot tired, but it means it's work. Like you give yourself all these excuses, but anything but actual, like, the consumption of food. So I've been there. So that's why I have sympathy. Like, trust me, I've been there, which is why I talk about it so much.
No, I love that. I love actually hearing about what you have done yourself, because I think it helps people realize like, oh wait, I can relate to that. I do that now, and you're out of it and you're in a great place and you are enjoying foods and balanced life. Like, was there anything else that you took part in that helped you be like, yeah, I need to be a dietitian and I need to talk about these things?
Yeah. So, you know, and what's a little bit sad is that when I became a dietitian, so I used to work in fashion. And so that was like very much disordered eating fueled, times like 100.
Yep.
And I'm not saying it's everybody in fashion. I'm not saying that because I still have friends in fashion who are fine, but that definitely was a huge part of my issue.
Right.
And so I became a dietitian when I was still in like my disordered eating days, because I thought, you know what? I'm so healthy. Like here I am with my green, right, juices and my salads. I'm like, I'm so healthy. I'm going to help other people. But then when I became a dietitian, especially working in public health, I realized, wait a minute, this is not good. This is not great. Even the advice I'm giving, let's start to really work on that. And that's actually how I got out of it. Because unfortunately, a lot of times with dietitians, a lot of us get into the field with what's called orthorexia, which is like an unhealthy obsession with being healthy. And so, you know, luckily I took a turn for the better, but it does happen where we get into the field thinking, I'm going to, you know, pass on, we don't know it yet, but basically passing on your disordered eating onto others.
Oh, wow.
So fortunately I got out of that. I'll just say that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've never thought of it like that, but that's so true. And even I know like dietitians online transparently that are like, they are passing on their disordered eating actually because of the things that they talk about. And, you know, there are some podcasts out there, you guys, that do spew misinformation and kind of negative effects. And also that, I don't remember the word, but that negative like obsession with being healthy. And trust me.
Oh, orthorexia.
Orthorexia. Yes. I love being healthy, but I also recognize that I want to live my life. Like literally, I have had to weigh, you know, the pros and the cons of like how healthy I can be, but also like, am I unhealthy over here? But when I'm over here on the extreme health side, it's my obsession. It's my everyday thought. It restricts when I want to have fun with my friends, meaning like going out to eat somewhere, as simple as that, or like having a charcuterie board, which makes me happy. So like it actually just eats away at honestly some of your happiness. Granted, I'm still a very healthy person, I like to say, but like that's air quotes. That's to me, that's my body and what I perceive as healthy and what makes me feel good, but also allows me to live my life. So I want to say that because I think that there's just so much misconception of what healthy is, and looking on to people and being like, okay, I got to be like them. Or even the podcasts that have health expert after health expert after health expert on, that actually causes fear mongering and can be very hard to decipher and to be able to live your life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, food should be joyful. And I think sometimes we've lost that connection because there should be joy in what we're eating and just being around people and enjoying that social connection. So hopefully we can get there again.
I hope so too. Okay. So we talked about all the things. We've talked about the negative, I know, but like, let's just simplify it all. What should we actually just be focusing on?
So I always like to say to, first of all, choose foods that you enjoy to eat, right? Because I will always be a huge advocate, of course, for fruits and vegetables. But if you don't like I always use this as an example, kale, right? If you don't like kale, then don't eat it. Like I always give that example because for some reason, people always talk about how much they dislike the taste of kale, but yet you see it on their plate. They're like, well, I need to eat it. So no, we actually don't have to because there are plenty of other leafy greens that you could eat. But so that's the thing, right? So simplify, always try to have some sort of vegetable or fruit. And I say fruit because I think also fruits are another demonized product.
Don't even get me started.
Because, oh, I know, like the sugar in fruit. It's like, yes, it's natural sugar, but you know, fruit is still giving you a ton of micronutrients that we need, a ton of vitamins, minerals, and also fiber. Yeah. So yes, fruit is great. So I always say in the mornings, vegetables might be a little bit harder in the mornings, but maybe try to have some fruit that you enjoy. Apples, put it with some like nut butter or something like that. For those of you, I can't have nut butter, but for those of you who can, I hear it's delicious.
It is so good. I'm sorry.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, so I hear. If you have an allergy like me.
Bummer.
Yeah, but also something like high protein. Like, so I'm also on the go a lot for work. So I always look for things like yogurt, right? So yogurt with a high protein content that will fill you, because my goal is to find foods that will fill me and actually satisfy me. And I hate to say it, but a lot of those low fat, and if you actually enjoy it, by all means continue, but a lot of those low fat yogurts or low fat products, you're hungry after an hour because they're not really sustaining you. And so our body needs fat. Our body needs that. So yes. I always say, try to go for something that will actually fill you up. So adding things like, again, nuts, if you can eat it, fruits for the fiber, all of those things that will actually sustain you in the mornings. And of course at lunch, maybe seeing how to get in more vegetables, right? Because vegetables also have a ton of fiber, ton of the vitamins and minerals. So those are good things. Even whole grains. That's why I'm such a big fan of like the quick meals, like pasta. You can buy like the whole wheat pasta, or there's some like chickpea pasta, if that's your thing. Like those are great too, you know, so those are quick to make. So finding foods that will actually satisfy you and also fill you up, because I think a lot of the problem now, especially people ask me all the time about sugar. I have such like a huge sugar craving, and sugar, like I have a sweet tooth also, but sometimes the reason we're craving sugar so much is honestly because we're not eating enough throughout the day.
Interesting. Yes.
And it's true, because whenever, like, let's say at night, right? When people say, oh my gosh, all I want is chocolate. All I want is, you know, such and such. And then when you look at what they've eaten throughout the day, it's not much food. So your body is craving quick energy. And so that's a lot of times the reason why we have high sugar cravings. So really think about what you're eating throughout the day. And that could mean, again, packaged foods like that are sustaining you. So I just want to put that out there too. Yes. So those are usually like my go-to tips, because nutrition, I know that for individuals, sometimes it differs and it can feel overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be. It does not have to be overwhelming. So
I know. You're working on simplifying it for people, which I appreciate so much.
Yeah.
I feel like, you know, some things that I do, like just best practices or things that have helped me is like, I don't like vegetables in the morning. I think it's a little funky town. So what I do is I can make an avocado toast. I do it on a hash brown. Because I can't, I'm not having gluten right now because my tummy's sad. But soon I'll come back to my bread. And I put some microgreens on my avocado, toast, air quotes, cause that's not actually bread, but I put a huge heaping handful of spinach into my shakes because I love a chocolate shake. I also use a little, like greens powder because it's just a nice little on top of like micronutrients that I don't normally eat every day. And I don't taste it at all in the chocolate, right? Like, so that's what I do in the morning for getting my like greens in. I eat, like I had a peach at dinner last night. You know what I mean? Like having that vitamin C is really helpful for digestion and digesting proteins. And even like, I'll tell you right now, I had What's that good brand at Costco that like that guy makes packaged like meals? What are they called? Do you know what I'm talking about?
It's not Kirkland, right?
No.
No.
Oh my God. I'm going to quick Google it. It's like a coconut chicken Costco. And it's, Kevin's. Oh my gosh. People are out there like yelling in their headphones probably like Kevin's. I had Kevin's. It's prepackaged. It's packaged and it's
convenient.
Cooked chicken and it's convenient. And guess what? It's effing good. And I got all the right nutrients. And guess what? I made coconut rice and I used regular coconut milk, not low fat, just whole like deliciousness, and a spoonful of sugar in my coconut rice to be tasting the best. And guess what?
Yeah. I'm
sitting here feeling amazing, living balanced, a little bit of added sugar, but not like an exorbitant amount. And I know added sugar is a hot topic. I actually just want to ask you then, because we're talking about it, but like when we're looking at added sugar, what are we looking at and like how much in a day realistically?
Yes. So we should really be aiming for it's okay. So I don't want people again to be hyper focused on like numbers. And I think that, so with the added sugar, I think sometimes it gets a little bit confusing when we do look at labels, because for something like fruit, right? If you see a label, like if fruit had a label, it would still have sugar on it. But when we say added sugar, that means that means adding sugar to something, right? So there is natural occurring sugar and then there's added sugar. So yes, we should be trying to maybe limit that a little bit, right? Because again, it's not the best, even for our teeth. I always give that example. Like people talk about their energy and inflammation. I'm like, also your teeth, right? Dental hygiene. So yes, we can look at that. I don't want people, because I feel like it will get to a hyper focused point, but I think that we can think about limiting like the added sugar. So if you are looking at the label, look at the added part, because sugars are naturally occurring even in vegetables. Yes. Okay. So just want to put that out there also. But like I said earlier, I really think, and there are other reasons why we can also be craving things for sure, but sometimes there's such an underconsumption of food during the day. And then at night, when you're just like hangry, right? You're reaching for the quickest thing. And often that is something that is high in sugar, like a dessert, like a cookie or whatever it is, because our body is looking for energy from calories. And, that quick sugar is going to give us the energy. So I just want people to think about that a little bit more. So not that sugar is like toxic. I use that in air quotes, but we can look at it in a mindful way, in a healthy way.
Mindfulness is a good thing. I like that. We talked about shakes being green, and we didn't talk about things saying that they're clean on the label. What does clean tell us?
Nothing. Clean tells us nothing, because clean is literally just a marketing term. There's no actual definition from the industry. There's no definition from the government. You can I could even I'm holding up my coffee cup right now. I could call this clean coffee if I wanted to. There's
clean.
No regular, exactly, right? Like no regulation. So, but the thing is that it sounds good. Like it sounds like, oh, I'm being healthy if I eat clean. So you'll see that word thrown around like detox. You'll see clean, right? I call them cousins, because when you see detox, you often see clean too.
Oh yeah.
So the dynamic duo. So no, there's no actual definition of clean, because everyone will also have their own definition for what it means. So just know that it's just a marketing term. That's all it is.
People ask me in the fitness industry too, like, how do I eat cleaner? And I'm like, what I always redirect with is we want to eat wholer. We want to eat closer to the ground, because that's where more nutrients comes from. Okay.
Right.
Higher nutrient dense foods. That doesn't mean go pick the leaf off the ground and eat it. Or you have to be growing it in your backyard. I just mean, the more you're eating direct from the earth, the higher nutrients you're going to get. But also, guess what? I eat chicken sausages almost every day, and they're not the cleanest. I get a cleanish brand. Sorry, I'm using the word clean on accident, but like a healthier brand, meaning less additives in the meat or whatever. But they're still technically processed and convenient and frozen, and it's okay. So, just be careful with what you're looking for. You had a really good quote, I thought, and it was that health is not just what we eat and exercise. There's so much more to it, and it requires nuance. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Definitely. So what I really mean from that quote is that we forget about the socioeconomic factors. We forget about people's lifestyle when we're talking about health. And we also forget about genetics too. So I think that, yes, I'm a dietitian, so I will always talk about wanting to eat better for you as an individual, but I also understand that it is individual, right? To put it mindfully, like I can't tell the same person, making up like I can't even think right now, like a salad, like with all these different ingredients. I can't give that recipe to every single person I talk to, because not every single person will have access to those ingredients.
Right.
And, so I live in New York, and even in a place like New York that is very densely populated, we still, in some neighborhoods, there is still lack of grocery stores. So all we have in some areas are the bodegas, which are, like the little corner stores, which, is great if you're running in to get something. But if you're looking for fresh produce, believe it or not, some areas that's very hard to find. And when it is available, it's very expensive. Right. And, I'm not an economist at all, but I know that the economy right now is not the greatest. So a lot of people are struggling. So many people are working multiple jobs with multiple mouths to feed. So no, finding something like organic, again, kale. Like, I don't know why I always think of kale.
I do too,
Swiss
though.
chard, because I want to change it up. Swiss chard, right? That's not going to be accessible to everybody. So I think that we need to realize that a lot of people, they don't have access either to a store. And when they do, maybe they can't afford things that you see on a list, of like the clean foods or whatever it is. Not everyone can afford that. So I really just want people, when they think of health, to think of it as individual, and to think that, yes, someone's access to food plays a huge role. Even like clean water. There's some states right now that don't even have clean water to drink. Or like, green spaces, safe spaces to exercise in or to move their bodies in. So all of these things are so important when we're talking about health that we sometimes forget about.
Yes.
Right? So just trying to remember, it's individual.
That. I can't wait to read your book too. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but it's Live Nourished.
Thank you.
And I love that it says make peace with food, banish body shame, and reclaim joy, which is about having that healthy relationship with food, and takes in all of those amazing things. With your book, I'm sure like all of the things that were talked about is what inspired you to write this book. But what's your go-to tip for nourishing the body that maybe we need to all hear?
Yes. So I know I feel like I keep saying the word individual, but really
that's okay.
Try to know what works for you and what doesn't, right? And I think sometimes we ignore what's not working for us because, again, we're looking at what other people are doing.
Right.
And so also I think that sometimes like these different diets, like they become people's personality traits, right? So yeah, like someone will say, I'm doing keto. And it's like, okay, you don't have to call it that, or you don't have to say intermittent fasting. Like maybe you realize if I eat later than 8 p.m. for my body, it's not going to be pretty happy. So maybe, but you don't have to call it like intermittent fasting. So that's what I mean when I say personality trait. I'm really not trying to shame anybody, but
no, I get what you're saying.
Sometimes I think, sometimes we get into that headspace of, again, that black and white thinking. But again, it's super individual. And I think that sometimes we ignore what our body's asking for. Right. Because we're trying to follow a list of rules. And so when we're talking about like the food rules and really trying to, follow all these steps, we shouldn't be doing that. We should really be listening to our bodies. It should be intuitive. I know there's, some people have heard of intuitive eating. I'm not an intuitive eating counselor, but I think intuitive eating is honestly just eating. It should be eating, but again, we have all these diets surrounding us, so we need something called intuitive eating now.
Yes.
So I really just want people to really listen to their bodies. And again, it's not going to look like the person next to you, how you're eating, how you're living. So
I love that. I love how you worded that too. I want to kind of wrap up our food conversation with like removing the food rules. And this is a perfect segment because it's removing fear. And you said that like the individualism, feeding your body for what it wants and that food intuition. But I hear things like, I can't eat because it isn't lunchtime, but I'm really hungry. Like removing those rules. Can we talk about that?
Yes. So our body does not have an open and closed time. Like I always tell people this, I think that that's the question I actually get asked a lot. What times should I be eating? Or what time should I stop eating? And it's like, there is no time limit, and I think that's very much, I could be totally wrong, but I feel like that's such an American thing because like any single time you travel, I remember in Barcelona, like my friend and I will never forget, we made dinner reservations at 8 p.m. We were the only ones there. And we were like, where's everybody? And he was like, yeah, dinner here is at like 10.
Oh yeah, I remember.
I just want to say.
So much fun, by the way.
Yeah. Exactly. They're looking at us like, why are they so early?
What are you doing here? Yeah, exactly. And why didn't we take a nap? Like literally.
Yeah, exactly. Like everyone's napping. What are you guys doing?
Yeah, exactly.
But that's what I mean. Like, I think that it's so funny that here we're so focused on, I can't eat anything after 8 p.m. And it's like, no, our stomachs don't have like an open and closed time. And I say that because I'm a night owl. I'm working on it. This is one thing that I am working on, but I go to bed ridiculously late. But let's say if I stopped eating at 6 p.m., right? If I gave myself that rule and I'm not going to bed until midnight, that's a long time.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that sometimes we get caught up in rules instead of realizing what's actually working for our lifestyle. And so I just want people to realize the food rules might be hindering us actually on our health journey because we're looking for a checkoff list instead of realizing what's actually working for us. So the whole thing about like not eating past or eating until or whatever, if you are hungry and you have access to food, I want to also say that, eat something.
Yeah.
Like you know what I mean? Like it's 11:15. Who cares? You're hungry. Eat something.
Yeah. If you're hungry, feed your body.
Please.
And like,
please.
Obviously, yeah, best practice, don't eat an hour before bed because your digestion is going to be rolling.
Yeah.
It's not because of other, we have too many rules in the society. I love that you talked about that. Another one is we always need carbs in America. Like how bad are we?
We're not. Okay. First of all, I think it's so funny because every single country you go to has carbs, as even a main dish. Okay. You see like rice. Rice is, a staple in so many cultural cuisines. I mean, come on now. So I think that whenever I see people talking bad about carbs, and when they say carbs, they don't mean like the vegetables. Of course, they mean like the rice, pasta, bread. That's a staple for many cultures. Not to mention, we've been eating those things. Something like bread goes back before I don't even know when.
I don't even know.
We've always eaten bread, right? So, and I understand, of course, gluten sensitivities, not everyone can have it, but that doesn't mean it's a bad food. And mind you, carbs, we need carbs. Our body needs carbs.
Yes.
Our brain especially runs on carbs. So a lot of times, I'll never forget this professor, and this wasn't even in my nutrition class. This was undergrad when I was trying to work in fashion. I forget if he was a math teacher. I don't remember, but I'll never forget this. And of course I thought it was bullshit at the time, but now I realize, oh my God, this was correct. Where he was it was finals. So we were all studying and, all of that. And he said, you guys need to eat a lot of carbs. And I thought he was joking. I was like, what? He's like, no. Your brain right now from all the studying, all like the thinking and staying up late. He's like, trust me, you need carbohydrates because your brain needs that. And of course I was like, whatever. But now as a dietitian, he was absolutely correct. And of course, add in exercise, add in all of these other things, we need carbohydrates. Yes. So please eat carbs. And we've been eating carbs for many centuries now.
We're going to be okay.
It's okay. We're going to be okay.
I tell my, like when I'm teaching in the morning, sometimes before work, it's like my class, I always say protein and carbs. You need to eat your carbs.
The dynamic duo.
Care. Yes. Like eat the carbs. They're not scary. They're not going to hurt you. They're not going to make you gain weight. In fact, you don't eat them and your body will be like, oh shit, I got to hold on to some stuff because you're starving me and I don't know what to do. That's when your body panics, when it doesn't have those carbs. So anyway, off my soapbox. I want to actually transition for kind of our last little bit to the mental illness. I want to, you talked about it as like mental illness shame. And I know we're kind of taking a left turn, but, there's a lot of people that talk about like just getting better. Like all you got to do is drink water and meditate and like, it'll kill your depression or your, anxiety. Me living in I have anxiety, and I want to actually read this write in, first. And then I want to have you answer to that, that conversation of that mental, illness shame. So this person wrote in and they said, the paralyzing feeling from ADHD that prevents me from doing the tasks that I should be prioritizing. I feel like my own worst enemy, and I need tips on how to combat this without always taking my ADHD meds. My specific situation is that I lost my job last month, so I'm on the job hunt, but it feels like the biggest task ever, to the point I have trouble even opening my laptop sometimes. Any advice is greatly appreciated.
Yes, there's so much, unfortunately, there's a lot of shame with mental illness. There's also a lot of shame with medications in general, what I call pill shame. And you'll see sometimes, especially when people are talking about food, which can get into the dangerous realm of things, when they're saying, well, you don't need this pill, this medication, you actually need to eat this way. And it's like, no, that person just might need both.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And I really want to emphasize that's okay. And I think that sometimes there's a lot of, distrust with what people call big pharma.
Right.
But we have to also understand that it's very interesting when people distrust something like, and I'm using the quotes here, big pharma, where there's somehow not a distrust with the unregulated supplements or the unregulated information. So we have to kind of, look at it with both lens. And if someone is telling you not to take medication because you don't need it, and instead, eat this food or do this cold plunge, I've seen so many different tactics, and it's like, no, medication, there's nothing wrong with medication.
Yeah.
Like if your body is not making serotonin and dopamine, like it's okay to buy it. It's okay to, and I think it's just so important because I think that a lot of people, the reason they're not taking their medication is because they're made to feel bad, that they're kind of quote unquote desperate. And I think and it's such harmful information. And, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with medication. I really just want to emphasize that. If you need it, please take it. I think that sometimes something like also with ADHD, I know a lot of times the medications too can also have an effect on eating and hunger, because you often forget to eat with that type of medication. So I know that sometimes people don't like taking medication for the effect on the body. Also, a lot of medications make you, change your body, right? They can make you gain weight. So I know there's also fear with that. But quite honestly, in my humble opinion, I think that, I think that mental health is so important. And I think that there should not be shame in taking medication. So by all means, if you need it, please take your medication.
I love that. No, we just need to have those conversations. Cause even I was in the world where I thought like, you don't really need them way back when. Like I'll admit, I'll be the first to admit I was wrong about it. And I have been humbled on that. You know, even as someone with pretty decent anxiety, I can manage it myself right now, but there may be a day that I can't really. And there's been times where I don't feel like I can. And I know my dad, for instance, like he can't manage it on his own, and he is very healthy and active and gets sleep and, you know, enter next health thing in there. Like not everybody is able to regulate on their own, and that's okay. And I think when I like to now say, like, the balance of this is you maybe shouldn't run to them if you haven't tried fixing the bare minimum basics foundation of your life. Like trying to eat a little bit healthier, trying to get a little more sleep, like things that naturally bring your stress down. If you are in a place where you've kind of you've given an effort on those things and you're still not, it's not all working and not everything feels perfect, that is absolutely okay. And you go in and you get that help, and you can even do it before you do those things. But ultimately your body it needs basics like that, and it will tell you what it needs. So if you are feeling funky, try to get the basics down first, and then you can answer to if that medication is for you, because honestly, there's a lot of people that do need it. It's an irregulation, and your mind needs it to feel regular, and that should not be shamed.
No, it really shouldn't. Yeah.
It makes me sad that is. So I just thank you for writing in as always, you guys. I appreciate you being honest with me and, you know, just figuring out like what you need help with and saying it and speaking it into existence and being honest about what you feel judged about. And honestly, this one, I don't think she realized that she may be trying to hold off from using that medication because you, in air quotes, should be able to regulate on your own. So thank you for answering that. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely.
You have been amazing to talk to. And I'm going to ask you one final question, because I ask everybody this moving forward. What is one thing that you cannot live well without?
Walking. And I say that with privilege because I live in New York, right? And so I live in a walkable city, but honestly, walking is I do a lot of other movement and exercise, but walking just gives me such clarity. Yeah. And it's such, again, going back to mental health, like if I am just having a stressful day, if I am just sometimes even I dance. So even going to dance class can feel too much, but like walking just sort of relieves that stress. It also, you know, is good for you and all that. But I just feel like even in the winter, which I know I'm still with my, you know, puffer coat bundled up, but just going out to get some fresh air, to get like that mental clarity, I realize is so important. And I do it every day, even if it's not, you know, the power walking, like just getting that fresh air, I realize is so important to me. And I know I live in a walkable city, so I'm able to do that. But for me, it's just so important. So I do try to do that daily.
Every day. Yeah. And you suggest that for most people to try to get outside, try to get, you know, movement in like that. I think
so. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just it's a thing that we can lean into when we are reaching for something that for health, like check in with yourself. Like, have you literally just gone outside to get air that isn't circulating in your home? Like, and you're breathing in and out, like just try a little few fresh air and deep breaths.
Yeah. And sun. Yeah.
And
sunlight.
And vitamin D. My God.
Yes.
You are amazing. I want to give everybody access to where they can find you, where they can find your book. Do you mind shouting out your handles or handle, I should say?
Yes, I'm very easy to find because I'm under the Nutrition T for all the social media. So I'm very easy to find. And my book, Live Nourished, is available wherever books are sold, also as an audiobook, which I also had the pleasure of narrating, which was a lot of fun. Yes. So that's out now. And yeah, that's where you can find me.
That's amazing. Well, you have been a total treat to talk to. I so appreciate you sharing your insights. It's a totally different take than the majority of takes right now on social media. And I think that's why it's amazing. Like that's why it's important to have these convos. So you keep spreading good words because it's helping people out there. My crew, as always, I appreciate you. If you ever need advice or you want to write in, you know, there's a link in my bio. If you want to call in, leave me a voicemail, it's 612-470-7569. I love a voicemail. I love hearing your voice for real. And remember that when I play it back on the pod, I will always change your voice. So no one will ever be able to find you. I promise. Shana, thank you again for being here. It's been awesome. And my crew, I will see you next week. Bye, everybody.